Hi there, everyone. Mallory here, and welcome to season two, episode 7. I also just saw that it's our 20th episode overall, so I'm very excited to have our guest because I have a personal connection to her as well. So please let me introduce you to Bev Foster. She is the co-founder and executive director of the Room 217 Foundation. She is an experienced performer, songwriter, and music educator. Bev has taught music in the Durham District School Board, where I actually went to school, as well as with her private studio, and has been the executive director of the Ontario Vocal Festival, which I'm pretty sure I sang at a few times when I was younger. And she's also the director of music in several churches. She is the community research fellow of the Laurier Center of Music in the community. And Bev speaks and writes on the power of music, something I so connect with, especially when it comes to life limiting situations. Her passion for music enhancing quality of life and care is contagious. And I agree with that. It is contagious because when I see you perform or I hear you speak about music care and about the work that you do at the Room 217 Foundation, I feel inspired to learn more about your topic. So thank you so much for being here, Bev.
Mallory, it is a distinct pleasure to be with you and just this personal connection we have that goes back a long way. In
Yes.
Fort Perry, it's kind of neat to be here with you today. Congratulations on all you're doing with Vive. Very
Thank
exciting.
you. Thank you so much. It is really cool that we both came from music backgrounds. That's how we know each other and our small town connection of Port Perry and how we both sort of navigated into this supportive aging and end of life space and found ourselves both here many years later. I think that's so cool that that has happened for
I
both of
know I
us.
had to sort of shake myself at the conference we were at together last year.
Yeah,
Same thing,
yeah.
and this is amazing, Mel. So yeah,
Yeah,
great to be here.
wonderful. Thank you. So why don't you jump in and tell us a little bit about yourself and then also your organization, Room 217 Foundation?
Sure will. Well, you've done lots about introducing me, but I am so pleased to be part of this organization. It's the Room 217 Foundation, I guess you could say legally is what we go by. But over the last couple of years, we've kind of sort of front facing call ourselves Music Care by Room 217. It just sort of says what we do
Right.
um, very obviously. And what we do is we support and empower paid and unpaid caregivers to integrate music into their regular day to day practice. We do
Mm-hmm.
it by giving them tools. So we actually produce, um, we'll say, music that has both therapeutic and artistic values as we produce it with particular outcomes.
Okay.
I can talk more about that in a minute, but that's one thing we do is tools. And then we do training. We're
Hmm.
probably known best for our training, training caregivers and how to actually use music care strategies that we can all use, no matter whether we perceive ourselves to be musical or not. And in the last couple of years, Room 217 has also begun a certification program, which follows suit with our training. So those are really our three main pillars. We do have a research partnership with McMaster as well, with the
Okay.
health sciences. So that really helps us just stay grounded in evidence and the
Mhm.
research. And yeah, so that's what we do on a day to day basis.
That's incredible. It has grown so much since I actually remember when you first started this foundation, you and your husband and I'm sure many others. And it's so incredible to see the growth that you've had and the impact that you've been able to have. Now, maybe you could talk a little bit about the history of Room 217. Like what was the impetus for you to start this organization?
Yeah, well, as I was a music educator,
Hmm.
taught in schools, and worked. I still continue to work in churches, but when you're working with people, you're working with people, and so
Hmm.
music has this real capacity um, to engage with people in relationship and that sort of thing. And certainly, I had some students who I would adapt how I taught because of learning needs and that sort of thing. So that you just sort of I just sort of intuitively did do that. But I had a personal experience about just over 20 years ago now when my dad was dying. And he was dying in room 217 at the Uxbridge Cottage Hospital, which isn't too far from here. And you know, through that whole trajectory, he was ill for about 18 months, and music was the way he and I connected, and it was the way I felt I could support him. Often there were no words; it was just the music playing, and we understood each other because we actually had done a lot of music together in our lifetime,
Hmm.
together. So it was the natural way to support him. But the night he died, or the night before he died, a few hours before he died, all my siblings were around his bedside. There's six of us, and mom, and we actually sang his songs. Like
Oh,
when I say sang his songs, I mean a lot of it was la 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 because we couldn't
yeah.
remember words, but they were his songs. And my
Yeah.
dad loved hymns, Christian
Mm,
hymns, and those were his songs, and those were the songs that really brought him comfort.
mm,
And dad was subcutaneously morphined at that point.
mhm.
And Mal, you're a music grad. You would know, and a singer, so you would not even. He tried to sing along,
Oh, wow.
and it was. I know it was a sound I hadn't heard before. It was like this. I don't even know quite how to describe it, but I thought it was amazing that here he
Yeah.
was out of it, but trying to
Yeah.
sing, right, and we
It
couldn't
just
remember the
shows
words.
how music connects to the soul. Like his soul was
Oh,
in there.
it
His
it
body
reaches.
and mind might have been drugged, but his soul was fighting to come through.
You got
Yeah.
it, and I mean this is what music can do. It reaches these
Yes.
places, right? And
Hmm.
so I've got to say, when said goodbye to dad for the last time that night, and I walked out in the parking lot, I was just walking to the car and I went, wow, like we nearly missed that. And
Yeah.
we're a pretty resourceful family. And
Hmm.
it's sort of like, okay, nobody ever offered dad music in
Huh.
the hospitals he was in. Not a diss, just an observation.
Hmm.
Um, and maybe so I had two questions actually, and they continue to drive what I do this very day and drive our organization.
Hmm.
Do caregivers understand the power of music in living and dying?
Mm.
And do they have the resources they need to use it? Because
Right.
look, not everybody can just, sing like you
Yeah.
or maybe play the piano like me, right? Like not
Right.
everybody has that background, real
Hmm.
or perceived, like
Right.
they maybe
Yeah.
just don't think they're musical, but we can all use music. And so,
Yes.
those have been the driving questions
Hmm.
that we still to this day are doing our work to answer.
Mm, wow. I mean, I knew that story. I hadn't heard you actually tell it. I just knew it from hearing people talk about it. But it's so powerful to see just what you described there about it coming out of him despite all the medications that were being used to keep him comforted from that perspective. The fact that you and your family were able to give him comfort through his love of music. And I think that most organizations, whether they are not for profit or profit, a lot of them, when they start with that one sort of reason, that one sort of push, like why am I doing this? And it's something that I get asked for with Viive as well. And you have this beautiful connection to your father and that moment that you and your whole family shared, his last moments together. No wonder you have done so much with Music Care and been able to really share it with so many people because of
Well,
that drive.
I'm going to tell you the other thing, Mel. That's so true. And you're a young entrepreneur. You're doing something similar where you
Mhm.
start because you have a passion for something. But in that room, it didn't just help Dad; it helped us.
Yes, of
It
course.
connected like there were seven of us around his bed, right? And
Mhm.
it connected us and
Yeah.
gave us that kind of well, it was nonverbal communication because at that point
Mhm.
like we weren't really talking like dad wasn't going to talk back in that
Yeah.
sense or answer
Yeah.
back, so it was just this bond that was
Mhm.
very special bond, and to this day I think if you asked any of my siblings we would remember those moments as
Yes.
something pretty sacred, right?
Yeah, that's really beautiful. So now the reason we have you on this month is because it is Music Therapy Awareness Month in March.
Right.
And when we think about medical treatments, music, as you pointed out, isn't something that necessarily comes to mind for most people. So why can music be such a powerful tool for healing and for supporting people through a medical journey?
Yeah, and I'm Music Therapy Month. We have a lot of our colleagues are music therapists,
Hmm.
and we have such respect for the profession. It is a scope of practice. It's a
Hmm.
rigorous training with a
Yeah.
supervision and that sort of thing.
Hmm.
Um, Now we don't practice music therapy. I'll maybe explain that in a minute. Like
Yeah.
our approach is music care. It's
Hmm.
it's more about all of us being able to use music intentionally for health and
Yeah.
well-being.
Hmm.
A music therapist would um, be the clinician. we,
Right.
we always sort of position them as the clinicians, the ones that
Right.
do the assessing,
Hmm.
create the clinical goals,
Yes.
write the reports, and that
Hmm.
sort of thing. And even in music therapy, I mean, it's quite the field has really really grown in Canada and around the
Yeah.
world. And when there are even specialties like neurologic music therapy, which
Oh, I didn't know that.
is phenomenal. Yeah,
Mm,
actually,
that's
the
really
sort of the
cool.
headquarters of it, or the center
Okay.
for it, is at the University of Toronto now.
Oh, okay.
So Canada's leading in this, and um, so without getting too technical, I guess some reasons why. I mean, neuroscience has really helped us over the last 20 or 30 years to understand the mechanisms of what's going
Hmm.
on with sound
Okay.
processing in
Hmm.
our brains, and so we're hardwired for music. I
Hmm.
would put it that way. Rhythm is a primer. It primes our brain, and it
Hmm.
gets you talk to anybody with Parkinson's, and they probably have a playlist that they walk to, and
Oh,
a lot of that is
okay.
because it primes their gait and their walking, and can
Okay.
help work. Melody. I'm just thinking through.
Hmm.
This is sort of in layman's terms, I suppose you could say a lot of neuroscience condensed sort of to understand it. But rhythm's one big part of why. Think about our body rhythms.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
mean, our bodies work in rhythms, right?
Yes.
So our body's used to rhythms and sort of the cadences and that sort of thing. Think about melody, and just even though I'm speaking right now, the prosody in my voice, it's going up and
Yep.
it's going down, much
Hmm.
like singing. Although those are your speaking and your singing systems are different in
Hmm.
how the brain processes it. It's still, we have prosody as we speak. So
Hmm.
this up and down, this is something that our brains have been wired for. Yeah, so I mean, you've got the whole sort of neuroscientific piece that really like speaks to rehabilitation and
Hmm.
speaks to
Yeah.
helping people with stroke
Hmm.
rehabilitation and maybe like acquired brain injury when it affects walking and that sort of
Hmm.
thing, Parkinson's. So yeah, there's a lot of connect there around, we'll just say, musical interventions that are evidence
Right.
based
Hmm.
that can really mitigate certain conditions and that sort of thing. I
Hmm.
think the other real, like, there's a couple of big ones, but that, like, I think that is a big one, the neuroscientific sort of the mechanisms in our brain. I also
Hmm.
think, like, music is social.
Hmm. Yeah.
Like, that's like Mallory. I remember you singing with my kids in choirs at school,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
And so, that's your friend group, probably,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
The music, you do music with people.
Yes.
You're
Yeah.
in choirs, you're in drum circles.
Hmm.
Um, and so the whole ethos, the whole modality of what music is a social thing. And so
Yes.
when we're looking at things like isolation, which of course all of us had to endure,
Yeah.
during the pandemic, but isolation as being one of the great things we need to combat in this time,
Hmm.
and other other issues that may result in mental health conditions and that sort of thing. Like, music can really be that a thing that helps us re-engage with
Yes.
people, right? When or maybe express ourselves when we really have withdrawn and that sort of thing. So I think there's just a lot of social implications, and of course
Hmm.
that can even be, that can even really, I think, tie into as well community narratives. So if
Hmm.
you're living, for example, in a long-term care home, or in a place where you reside in a care setting,
Hmm.
you can even use music to help with that narrative and
Hmm.
soundscapes and all of that kind of thing. Like, there's just so much that I could talk about in the social, but maybe that's good for now, because I
Hmm.
think you already touched on it with my dad's story, and that is, I think that music is an incredibly powerful spiritual tool
Hmm.
where people are feeling despair, or they're or you know they need to be comforted.
Yes. Yeah.
Music can be that thing
Hmm.
that can actually um, you know uh, go deep. It's like a transcendent thing it
Hmm.
transcends words.
Hmm.
Music can touch our mood and affect affect our mood and that sort of thing. So I mean, we our model in Route 217, how we built it, is music is for whole person care. The
Mm.
biology, the
Yes.
biological, the social, the emotional, the cognitive,
Hmm.
and the spiritual. It reaches into all of those places very profoundly.
Yes. No, and I love how you say that. I also love how you've been able to explain to our audience a music therapist and music care, how that's different. I think that that is important to understand. And I think that I mean, I was thinking of all these examples as you were describing things just in my own life. And actually, something that I did recently, and it came out of when we saw each other at a conference last year, and I came and saw you speak. You were talking about a recent set of CDs or recordings that you had done that were from different nationalities, different ethnicities, different modalities of music and whatnot, which I found so interesting. And I recently hosted a family meeting in person, and I knew there was going to be a lot of tension. Like I had been prepared for that. And so the husband, the patriarch of the family, had recently died, and he was obsessed with jazz. Like that was something that everyone talked with me about, was how much he loved jazz music. So when I arrived to get everything set up at the wife's house and we're waiting on all these kids and spouses and grandkids to arrive, I had jazz music playing and they came in and they were
Clever,
immediately just like
clever,
talking
clever.
about it, right? And it got all of them relaxed. I mean, we still had to go through some challenging things, and that's fine and that's expected. But they came in, and because you're coming into those meetings like very tense, like, oh gosh, what am I going to learn? What's going to happen? Am I going to be upset by this? And they came in and then they heard the jazz, which is what they heard every time they would walk into that house. And it just triggered them into this very like relaxed, positive state as we then, yes, turned the music down and went down that path that we had to go on together. And even just thinking about, I think I have a friend who, love her as I do, can really might actually be tone deaf. But to her credit, when she had a baby, she sang to her baby. Like it's the instinctive thing that we do to calm babies is sing to them. And I don't know if that's because we've seen that around us or if it's just this like motherly instinct to do, whether we have lovely trained voices or not, but it's something that instinctively happens. So why wouldn't that be applicable in any situation moving on? Why is it just with little infants and little kids? Why don't we just continue to apply that? And I see it in my daughter a lot. Sometimes she'll come home from school and I'll be like, okay, let's start your homework. And she'll say, I need you to put on like loud music. And I'll go, oh, okay. And so we'll put on something really upbeat and loud. And to her credit, she sits there and works. But it's something that her brain is holding on to, some sort of energy that she wants to be able to focus. And like she's identified that and she's 9. And you know, it's so interesting how we use it in life. So why wouldn't we use it in challenging life situations and in end of life? Like it just makes so much sense to me as I move down this path as well. So I think it's so incredible that Music Care exists and that you are providing these resources, as you said, to people who might recognize how important it is, but have no idea how to actually utilize it to support people.
It's interesting you say that. We run conferences, right? We've been doing it since
Yeah.
2010. Excuse me. And um, every single time we've run. I think we've done 16 now, 15 in Canada, 2 in the
Mhm.
UK.
Okay.
No, 17 in Canada, 2 in the UK. Every single time we do an evaluation, it always comes back. Didn't realize music people perceive music as entertainment.
Yes.
And so it's that paradigm shift of actually
Mhm.
understanding there's way more to this. There's way
Yeah.
more science to this than meets
Yes.
the eye.
Hmm.
And you use the word intuitive. For some people, it's absolutely intuitive, and for
Hmm.
others, they need to be convinced. But let me
Yes.
tell you, there's lots and lots and lots of evidence to
Mhm.
prove what we're talking about.
Exactly. You know, at Vive, we specialize in aging and end of life planning. And so a lot of our audience is really navigating their concerns around making those plans, communicating them to their families. And I think that, and this is something I might try to bring in. I'm actually thinking of one client right now who I know is really struggling. And is that a way to bring comfort into those situations when myself or other practitioners who are in the estate planning sphere, right? Like, how do we provide comfort to our clients when we have to ask them some really tough questions that they are not looking forward to having conversations about? Could music be a tool or a resource to support those conversations?
For sure, I think music. I'm going to talk about music and end of life first, and then I'll come back to maybe address, you know, sort of these conversations we might have towards
Hmm.
towards that end.
Hmm.
But I mean, in terms of palliative care, what we're doing and
Hmm.
how we've, I guess you could say, packaged it with our
Hmm.
24 1 hour designed albums,
Hmm.
music albums that are, in hospices and palliative care units across the country and in long term care homes and are used specifically for that. Thing is, it brings comfort to people.
Hmm.
And especially if they know the music, if it's
Yeah.
their music, if it's preferential music. But it brings comfort. The other thing that's amazing is it can distract people from pain,
Mm. Yeah.
right? And there's some evidence to suggest that music may even potentiate pain medication,
Mm. I
which means
used it during labor, so that makes sense.
you might not even need as much
Yeah.
medication, I guess is the point. Or it'll make
Hmm.
it, or it'll have more efficacy if you use music with it.
Right.
I think there's a couple of other pieces we need to think about here too at end of life. One is life review. So that is something people do at end of life, and
Yeah.
perhaps maybe you're involved in that in Vive to some degree.
Hmm.
If you're planning ahead, for
Yes.
sure. But life review is more about telling your story, that
Hmm.
your narrative. And often people do life review. They may, some of my music therapist friends who work in palliative care, they'll actually create a song
Mm.
for somebody to leave a
Yeah.
loved one. Or they may make well, I know one place we've worked with in New Brunswick. They actually, this I think this is really cool. In their dementia unit, when people move into that unit, they actually create a video with that person's favorite music through the
Mm.
decades. So the family's asked to bring pictures, but also a song, a preferred song, a favorite song of that person, and they play it through the person's decade. So it might be
Mm.
like 6 songs or something. It's just, but that would be like a life review, and you can
Yeah.
use music beautifully because music's so interconnected to our life events, right?
Hmm.
It really. I mean, think about life events, weddings, funerals, first dance.
Yeah.
You've already mentioned lullabies.
Yes.
It's cross coded into the events of
Hmm.
our lives in that sense. So when you're thinking life review, it can also be something.
Hmm.
One thing I've learned in my years of doing this, which is I think one of the most beautiful thoughts and beautiful pieces, I think that I really like, and there's a big attachment to what I'm talking about with music, is something, and you may have heard of this, is relationship completion. It's
Mm.
a term we use to. It was Dr. Aya Byock has written on this. The four things that matter most in relationship completion: I love you, thank you, will you forgive me, I forgive you, and
Hmm.
goodbye. These
Hmm.
four sentiments that need to be expressed to close
Hmm.
well. And sometimes, like my dad, he could. How could he do that? He was on morphine.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
like I mean, like really, like he was a brain.
Yeah.
So the songs can say those things for us. I
Yeah.
remember when my grandma was dying of vascular dementia at the same time, and she actually died 2 years after my dad. And again, my mom and my sisters and I were around her bedside, and she couldn't talk, but we used the song "Wind Beneath My Wings." It was
Mm.
playing, and we just squeezed Nan's hand, and she squeezed back. We knew
Hmm.
she got it.
Yeah.
Like thank you. You're our hero.
Yeah.
So I find, like, and popular music is great to express those sentiments, right?
Hmm.
A lot of the time, will you remember me?
Yeah.
Some of these songs that we can use, and for some people, it's really, really hard to express that. They just have
Yes.
trouble expressing. So the song can express it for you.
Hmm.
And then, of
Exactly.
course, we can't forget about the grief work,
Yes.
because that is, in my view, that's just part of good palliative care, is the
Hmm.
aftercare and
Yes.
the grief work. And that's why I have my little keyboard here. I said to Mel I might just burst into song,
It's
but
gonna happen.
it's gonna happen. But for me, like how I work out my grief is in songwriting. That's my
Hmm.
personal. It's just my personal way of doing it. The songs don't
Yeah.
always come all at once. Sometimes, I have to process stuff through a journal, but usually you'll find I've written a song about something I've had to process, especially when
Yeah.
it's like it's a grief thing. And I remember with my nan, I wrote this song 5 years before she died.
Oh,
Like, she hadn't
okay.
died yet,
Right.
but the nan I knew was gone.
Right.
And
Hmm.
each visit, we had to find that Nan again, right? And we did a
Hmm.
lot of music with Nan. But this was the song I wrote. Are you okay if I sing it?
Yeah, go.
I think it's going to be okay. Just we didn't practice this. Can you hear it all right?
Yeah.
I walked into your room last night. You were sitting in your chair. You looked as I imagined, crown of ivory hair. Couldn't tell if you knew me, just wanted to be near, to hold the hand and stroke the face of one who was so dear. We both have age, time wears its lines, the years have come and gone. I'll remember special things, 'cause we've a special bond. Musty cupboard mannequins, smells of homemade bread, raspberry picking, making sure the dog was fed. The pictures in our hearts will never fade away. They're framed with the love we shared, mounted there to stay. Colors, places, sounds all tucked away. We'll be with each other in these pictures. I wonder what you're thinking as you're living in your chair. Do you remember Christmases, the moments we all share? Somehow, in spite of what I see, I think you've kept them too. The souvenirs are tucked away inside the real you. The pictures in our hearts will never fade away. They're framed with the love we've shared, mounted there to stay. Colors, places, sounds all tucked away. We'll be with each other in these pictures. We'll be with each other in these pictures.
Wow.
That
Bev,
helped
thank
me
you
a
for
lot.
sharing that.
Yeah, that helped me a lot just to get it out, right? Because
Mhm.
it's tough when dementia they call the long goodbye. So
Yes.
the grieving is over some years, right? So
Hmm.
yeah, I think we can't underestimate the power of music and grief work.
Hmm.
And there's all kinds of sort of theories about this, but um, a lot of people already have their celebration of life or funeral music picked
Hmm.
out, right? Because it's
Yeah.
something that's meaningful to them.
Hmm.
And it's pretty special stuff in terms of getting music that kind of helps you through that process.
No, I completely agree. And really, thank you so much for sharing that. First time we've had someone sing on here. You think I would have
Oh
done it
yeah.
by now, but I love that it was you. I love that it was you.
Aw, thanks, Mel.
Thank you. And before we wrap up here, if there's someone who's watching who thinks that music care could be a really useful tool for them or for their loved one, how can they bring music care into their own lives? What's a way for them to be in contact and to learn about the resources that you have?
Sure. I'm just gonna kind of mention three things. First of all, if you need a music therapist,
Hmm.
which would be more for a clinical purpose and
Right.
perhaps some sort of therapeutic value, you can
Hmm.
reach out to music therapists, where we are in Ontario at the Ontario Music Therapy Association or on the Canadian Association of Music Therapy website. I believe
Okay.
it's camt.ca. So,
Hmm.
you know, don't hesitate or reach out to us and we'll put you in contact with one if you're looking for that kind of support.
Hmm.
In terms of what we can help you with, we have a number of tools, and you can check out our website, musiccare.org. And we have palliative care resources. Again, 24 1 hour albums that have familiar sounds and songs, mostly familiar songs, but in our collection of 6 albums from music, we'll say diverse music from around the world. That's more iconic sounds.
Right.
Um, but it's very gentle. We do our music at about 60 beats per minute.
Okay.
So it's quite a bit slower and it's very, very gentle. So it really fills
Mm.
that space in
Right.
quite a profound way if you're looking for something for calming and that sort of thing. We have a dementia care singing program called
Mm.
Pathways. We have something called conversation cards, and that's what I didn't even finish that other thought before about your conversations. But really, music can open up a conversation. It really,
Yeah.
really can, and
Hmm.
set it on another tone. In fact, one of the sort of simple strategies I would share with our viewers today, whether you're a paid caregiver or an unpaid caregiver, or you're not a caregiver yet, if you're not a caregiver yet, you will be at some point,
Hmm.
is to share a meaningful song. And we say that to people because sometimes people perceive they're not musical or they can't sing or they can't
Right.
hum or whatever. And even by just sharing a song, and why that song is meaningful or significant for you can open up all kinds of conversations, right?
Yeah.
So we have some conversation cards that can give you prompts around that. And then we have a set of videos, beautiful videos that are used a lot in snoozling rooms, in foyer, like hospital waiting rooms and that sort of thing.
Hmm.
So they're beautiful. So we have those tools that you can get. All of that is available as well on the Music Care Connect app, which is available
Okay.
on the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. So all that you can get physical copies or digital copies.
Hmm.
If you're interested in our training, we have sort of this baseline training that anybody can take. You don't have to be musical. You don't even have to be a caregiver. Just if you're really interested, you can
Hmm.
look online for that. That's our music care training. We have other training options. We have a whole online classroom with, I think there's now 16 courses if you want to learn to play ukulele in care or bells in care, that kind of thing. And then, of course, there's our certification. If you're
Hmm.
involved in any kind of care setting, um, you may want to think about that for your care setting. But just for
Hmm.
your listeners who may be going, oh, how do I just do music care? Well, you know what? I'm just going to give you a couple of really simple strategies. One is a playlist.
Hmm.
And if you don't know how to curate a playlist, there's lots of curated playlists for you
Yes. Hmm.
online on apps like Calm. That's
Hmm.
they're curated and they're done with therapeutic
Yeah.
you know healing or matters of this kind in mind. They will curate a list.
Hmm.
Um, one of the most soothing things you can do is to hum. It's a beautiful thing. And so humming is a really great self-soothing, and it's also great. You mentioned it with lullabies with little ones,
Hmm. Hmm.
but at end of life, humming is a beautiful thing. If you're sitting vigil with somebody and you're not sure what to do, you could just start to hum.
Hmm.
I've told you about sharing a meaningful song. I think that's a really great one. Um, and the other thing is just be very aware of sounds. Of what's there's that was the one thing I found, and I still find when I go into hospitals is just it's just the annoying sounds,
Yeah.
right? And so it's just see what you can do to change up that soundscape.
Hmm.
That
Yes.
in terms of if even in your if you're somebody listening and you're just thinking, how can I do this at home? Maybe
Hmm.
change up what you're listening to ambiently in the room and in your
Yeah.
space, right? And think about some of those changes. Yeah. So is
Hmm.
that helpful?
It's so helpful. Thank you so much, Bev. I'm so glad we booked you so many months ago, and I'm so glad that we were able to share this time together in March and really help to educate people on music care and the work that you do. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mel, for having me. We'll see you again soon.
Yes. Bye bye.